The afternoon sky was clear, painted in soft shades of blue. When the sound of powerful engines echoed above the quiet little town, people working in the fields raised their heads. Shopkeepers stepped out of their small wooden stores. Children, playing with marbles in the dusty street, froze and looked up. It was not common to see airplanes here. This was a small town with only one dirt road leading in and out. There was no airport, no runway, nothing except grass, fields, and scattered houses. Planes flew high above, far away, never this close. But today, something different was happening. The huge silver body of a private jet appeared in the sky. It was flying lower and lower, wobbling as if something was wrong. The deep roar of its engines sounded uneven, like a giant struggling to breathe. People's eyes widened. Some shouted. Some pointed. "Look at that. It's coming down here," an old farmer cried, dropping his shovel. Mothers quickly pulled their children close. Men ran into the open ground, not sure whether to help or to hide. The jet circled once, its nose dipping dangerously. Then, with a sudden loud screech, it touched the ground on the flat, empty field just outside town. Dust and grass flew everywhere. The wheels bounced. Sparks appeared for a moment, but somehow, pilot managed to stop it before it crashed into the trees. The whole town was silent. The giant machine stood in the field like a trapped beast, breathing heavily, with smoke rising from its side. And then, the door opened. Out stepped men in black suits and dark glasses. Their faces were stern, scanning the area as if danger could appear from anywhere. They looked like shadows, not humans. Behind them, a tall man in an expensive gray suit appeared. His wrist carried a golden watch that shone even in the fading sun. His shoes looked as if they had never touched dust before. Everyone knew instantly he was no ordinary man. This was the billionaire. His name was whispered among the townsfolk. Some recognized him from the magazines and television shows. Others had never seen him before, but the way he walked, the way his men surrounded him, and the way his jet stood shining like a silver castle in their poor little townlet was enough to tell everyone that he was one of the richest men in the world. But now, he looked angry, very angry. He pulled off his sunglasses and threw them into the hands of one of his guards. His sharp eyes scanned the jet, then the ground, then the people staring at him. "What is this place?" he snapped. His voice was deep, commanding, the kind of voice that made even grown men step back. One of the guards leaned close. "Sir, emergency landing. The engine failed. We had no choice." "No choice?" the billionaire repeated, his tone dripping with disbelief. "I don't land in places like this. I don't get delayed. Do you know how much time I'm losing every second that plane doesn't fly?" The guard bowed his head, silent. By now, the townspeople had gathered in a circle around the field. Children stood on their toes to see better. Old women clutched their scarves tighter. Men whispered among themselves. "Who is he?" One asked. "He must be someone big." "Look at that jet," another replied. Rich people muttered a third, always acting like they owned the world. But despite their murmurs, their eyes were filled with curiosity. Nobody had ever seen such wealth so close. The jet itself looked like a miracle. Shining metal among the simple wooden houses. The billionaire, however, was not admiring anything. He was furious. He pointed at the engineers who had stepped out of the plane behind him. "Fix it," he ordered. "Now." The engineers, men in white uniforms with shiny toolboxes, nodded and hurried toward the jet. They opened panels, pressed buttons, and bent under the wings. Tools clicked, metal clanged, wires sparked, but nothing worked. Minutes passed. The sun dipped lower, painting the field in orange light. Sweat rolled down the foreheads of the engineers. They whispered to each other nervously, their movements becoming more desperate. Finally, one of them approached the billionaire. His hands shook as he spoke. "Sir, the damage is serious. The engine needs a part. We don't have it here." The billionaire's face turned red with rage. "What do you mean you don't have it? You're supposed to be the best. I hired you because you don't fail." The engineer lowered his eyes. We can't fix it here, sir. We need to bring it to a proper facility. The billionaire clenched his fists. He looked around at the poor town, at the cracked houses, at the dirt road, and at the crowd of people watching him. The idea of being stuck here, even for a few hours, was unbearable to him. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "I cannot be trapped in a place like this." The people in the crowd felt the tension rise. Some whispered that the plane might explode. Others worried that the rich man would blame them for something. Mothers pulled their children further back, and yet, one small boy stood at the very front. He was barefoot, his clothes torn, his hair messy from the dust. His skin was dark from the sun, and his eyes were sharp with curiosity. Unlike the others, he didn't look afraid. He looked interested. The boy's gaze stayed fixed on the jet. He studied the way the engineers touched it, the way the smoke curled from its side, the way wires dangled. His little mind was racing, thinking, connecting. He whispered to himself, so soft that no one heard, "I can fix it." The billionaire, still shouting at his men, didn't notice. The guards didn't notice. The crowd didn't notice. Only the boy knew what he had just said. And in that single moment, something began. Something that would change not only the fate of the jet, but also the life of the boy. In the heart of the billionaire, the smell of smoke lingered in the air. The private jet stood like a wounded giant, its silver body now covered in dust from the rough landing. The crowd of villagers hadn't moved. They watched every moment carefully, whispering among themselves, pointing at the strange men in black suits, and staring in awe at the rich man who had suddenly appeared in their poor little town. The billionaire paced back and forth in the grass, his shiny shoes sinking slightly into the dirt. His eyes burned with frustration. His voice was sharp, and every word carried the weight of power. "Why is it taking so long?" He barked at the team of engineers. "You've been here for almost an hour, and this jet still isn't moving. Do you know how much every minute is costing me? Do you?" The lead engineer, a tall man with glasses, wiped the sweat from his forehead. His white uniform was already stained with grease. He had been crawling under the wings, checking the engine, testing the wires, but nothing worked. "Sir," he said carefully, "we've tried restarting the system. We've tested the circuits, but the main problem is deeper. The engine is not responding. Something is damaged inside." The billionaire's eyes narrowed. "Then replace it. Order the part. Do something." The engineer hesitated. He looked around at the dusty little town, the broken houses, the tiny shops, the endless fields. He swallowed hard. "Sir, we can't not hear. There are no parts in this place. No tools, no machines. We would need to bring the jet to a proper facility." The words hit the billionaire like a slap. "No," he said flatly. "I don't wait. I don't delay. I don't stop." He jabbed his finger into the engineer's chest. "You don't tell me what you can't do. You fix it. That's why I pay you." The engineer's face turned pale. He looked at his team, but they were just as helpless as he was. They shook their heads, whispering quietly, trying to find another idea. The billionaire's anger grew hotter with every passing second. His voice rose, echoing across the field. "This is unbelievable! I'm stuck in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dirt and peasants, because you people can't do your jobs. I have meetings, deals, millions of dollars on the line, and you're telling me you can't fix a machine? A machine that you built." His words made the crowd murmur. The villagers exchanged uneasy glances. Some felt insulted by the way he spoke about them, calling them peasants. Others were simply frightened by his powerful presence. A woman whispered to her neighbor, "So much money, yet he talks like this?" Her neighbor replied softly, "Money makes men blind. Look at him." But among the whispers, there was still one boy standing at the front. The same poor black boy who had spoken earlier, his voice too quiet for anyone to notice. His eyes never left the jet. His small hands clenched into fists, not from fear, but from determination. The billionaire turned back to his men. His face was red now, veins showing on his forehead. "Get on the phone," he ordered sharply. Call the company. Send another jet. I want it here in an hour. The guard next to him shifted uncomfortably. Sir, this town is too far. The nearest airport is hundreds of miles away. A jet can't land here like this one did. It would be impossible. Impossible. The billionaire repeated the word as if it were poison. He hated that word more than anything. Don't you dare use that word with me. Nothing is impossible when I say it must be done. The guard fell silent. The engineers, desperate now, tried again. They opened more panels, pulled out wires, checked the fuel lines. One of them even climbed inside the engine, his body half hidden in the metal. Sweat dripped down their faces. Their hands moved faster, but their eyes showed fear. The billionaire paced harder, muttering to himself. This can't be happening. Not to me, not here. I don't get delayed. I don't wait. Time is money, and I don't lose either. He glanced at the villagers watching him. Their poor clothes, their rough hands, their dusty feet disgusted him. He felt trapped in a place he didn't belong. A place he never wanted to be, and yet, despite all his wealth, all his power, and all his men, he was helpless. The boy noticed this. He saw something no one else dared to see. The billionaire was afraid. Not of the town, not of the people, but of losing control. A man who ruled the world was powerless against a broken machine. The engineers finally stepped back. One of them shook his head. His voice trembled as he spoke. Sir, we've done everything we can. Without the right part, it's impossible. The billionaire exploded. Impossible. Again, that word. Do you fools want to lose your jobs? Do you want me to end your careers right here? Fix it, or don't bother coming back. The engineers looked down. They had no answers left. The air was thick with tension. The crowd didn't move, waiting to see what would happen next. Some pitied the engineers. Some feared the rich man's anger, but all of them felt the weight of the moment. And then, it happened again. A soft voice, almost like a whisper carried by the wind, broke through the chaos. I can fix it. It was the boy. This time, a few villagers turned to look at him. They frowned. A man chuckled and shook his head. Foolish child, someone muttered, but the boy didn't back down. His dark eyes were steady, filled with quiet confidence. He stepped a little closer to the field, his bare feet leaving marks in the dirt. The billionaire didn't hear him yet. He was too busy shouting into his phone, demanding answers that no one could give. But the boy's words hung in the air. They were soft, but they carried something stronger than all the billionaires shouting dash hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the impossible wasn't so impossible after all. The field was tense. The silver jet stood lifeless, its broken body surrounded by men in white uniforms who could do nothing more. The billionaire kept shouting into his phone, pacing like a lion trapped in a cage. His guards stayed close, their dark glasses scanning every movement around them. The villagers stood silently at a distance, afraid to get too close, yet unable to look away. The sight of so much wealth in their poor little town was almost unreal. For them, time had stopped. And then, from the front of the crowd, the boy spoke again. I can fix it, he said. This time, his voice was louder. Not a whisper, but a clear statement. The people nearest to him turned sharply. Some frowned. Others laughed. You fix that? An old man chuckled, pointing at the boy's torn shirt. That's not a bicycle, child. That's a jet. A woman shook her head, pulling her daughter closer. Don't embarrass us. Be quiet. But the boy didn't move. His eyes were steady, locked on the jet. His bare feet pressed into the grass as he took one more step forward. I can fix it, he repeated. This time, the words reached the billionaire's ears. He stopped mid-sentence, lowering the phone slowly. His eyes narrowed as he searched for the source of the voice. And then he saw him, the small, thin boy standing at the edge of the field, clothes dirty, hair uncombed, face filled with confidence. For a moment, silence covered the field, and then dash laughter. It started with one guard, then another, then a few villagers. Soon, the laughter spread like wildfire. People held their stomachs, some bent over, tears in their eyes from the absurdity. A boy. A poor boy? Fix a $1 billion jet? It was the funniest thing they had ever heard. The billionaire, however, didn't laugh. He raised one eyebrow and walked slowly toward the boy, his polished shoes leaving no dust behind. The crowd parted quickly, afraid to stand in his way. When he reached the boy, he towered over him like a mountain. His sharp eyes scanned the child from head to toe, bare feet, skinny arms, patched trousers. A faint smile of disbelief touched his lips. "So," the billionaire said in a cold, smooth voice, "you're the genius who claims he can fix my jet?" The boy lifted his chin. His voice was calm, almost fearless. "Yes." The billionaire's smile widened, but it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who thought he had just heard the greatest joke in the world. "You," he said slowly. "Do you even know what that machine is? Do you know how much it costs? My best engineers can't fix it, and you." He leaned closer, lowering his voice so only the boy could hear. "You think you can?" The boy did not flinch. His answer was simple. "Yes." The crowd gasped. The villagers couldn't believe the boy's courage. Talking to a man like this, so rich, so powerful, was dangerous. Some shook their heads, afraid of what would happen next. But the boy's eyes never wavered. The billionaire straightened, his laughter finally breaking out. It was a sharp, harsh laugh that cut through the air. "You can't fix that," he said loudly, his voice carrying across the entire field. "Don't you see? It's impossible. Look at you, you don't even have shoes, and you dare to think you can touch my jet." The villagers laughed again, some clapping their hands. A few children pointed at the boy, mocking him. "Fix it. Fix it," they chanted, giggling. The boy stood still, letting the laughter wash over him. He didn't smile. He didn't argue. He just repeated, in the same steady voice, "I can fix it." The billionaire's amusement faded. He tilted his head, studying the child. Something in those eyes bothered him. Something unshaken, something fearless. It was not arrogance, not pride, but pure belief. For a moment, the billionaire was silent. He looked back at his broken jet, then at his tired engineers, then again at the boy. Finally, he shook his head, smirking. "Very well," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Let us see this miracle. Go ahead, boy. Show me how a child from the dirt will fix what men worth millions could not." The guards laughed again. But the billionaire raised his hand to silence them. He wanted to see. Not because he believed, but because he wanted to crush this child's foolish confidence with his own eyes. The boy nodded. He stepped forward, past the villagers, past the guards, past the engineers who looked at him with disbelief. His small shadow stretched against the shining body of the jet. The laughter of the crowd began to fade. Whispers replaced it. Is he serious? Maybe he's crazy. What if? What if he really does something? Nobody knew what to expect. Nobody trusted the boy. But for the first time, all eyes were on him. And in that moment, the story truly began. The boy stood still for a moment, staring at the jet as if it were a puzzle waiting for him. His thin hands clenched and unclenched by his sides. His small chest rose and fell with deep breaths. Around him, the world buzzed with disbelief. The villagers whispered. Some still laughed, though softer now. Others frowned, wondering what this strange boy thought he could do. The engineers stepped back, their faces a mix of confusion and annoyance. One of them muttered under his breath, "This is ridiculous. We trained for years, and he thinks he can do what we couldn't." Another engineer scoffed. "He'll break something, and then it'll be our fault." The guards, however, didn't see it as funny. To them, the boy was a threat, small, weak, but still a threat. They stepped forward in unison, blocking his path. Their dark glasses reflected his small figure back at him like mirrors. "Stop right there," one of them ordered, his voice sharp. "No one touches the jet." The boy looked up at the men, his eyes calm. He said nothing. Behind them, the billionaire chuckled, folding his arms across his chest. "Well, well," he said loudly. "Are my men afraid of a barefoot child? Let him through." Let the boy play his little game. After all, he promised he could fix it. The guards hesitated. One of them leaned closer to the billionaire. "Sir, it's not safe. He could damage the engine further." The billionaire raised one eyebrow, his tone mocking. "Damage it further? Tell me, what exactly is left to damage? You and your best engineers already declared it impossible. So why not let him try? At least he has more confidence than all of you put together." The guards exchanged glances. Reluctantly, they stepped aside. The path to the jet was open. The boy walked forward slowly, each step steady, unshaken by the eyes watching him. The villagers fell silent, the laughter dying completely. Even the children who had mocked him earlier now stared with wide eyes, curious about what would happen. He reached the shining body of the jet. The smell of burnt metal and fuel filled his nose. The surface was warm from the sun, smooth under his fingers as he gently touched it. The billionaire smirked. "Well, what now, little mechanic? Do you know where the engine even is?" The boy didn't answer. He crouched down near one of the panels, his eyes scanning every detail. His small fingers traced along the lines of the metal, feeling, listening, thinking. The engineers groaned in frustration. "This is a waste of time," one said. "He's going to embarrass himself," another added. But deep inside, a strange unease grew in their chests. Because while they had rushed, panicked, and failed, the boy seemed come too calm. The billionaire leaned against his black car parked nearby. Arms still crossed, golden watch glinting in the light. His lips curved into a half-smile. He didn't believe the boy would fix anything, but he wanted to watch. Something about the child's courage amused him. Perhaps it was arrogance, perhaps foolishness. Either way, it entertained him in the middle of his frustration. The boy examined the jet's side carefully and looked at the ground. He spotted a small piece of metal rod lying nearby, probably dropped by one of the engineers. He picked it up, turning it in his hand, then tapped lightly against the panel of the engine. Tap, tap, tap. The sound echoed strangely. The boy tilted his head, listening. He moved a little further along the panel, tapped again. Tap, tap. Different sound. Hollow. He nodded slightly to himself. The villagers murmured. They didn't understand what he was doing, but the quiet confidence in his movements silenced their doubt. The billionaire, however, scoffed. "What is this? A magic trick? Do you think hitting my jet with a stick will fix it?" Still, the boy ignored him. His eyes were focused, his mind sharp. He had seen machines before, broken tractors, old motorcycles, radios with loose wires. He had never touched a jet, but he understood something the engineers didn't. Machines spoke if you listened, and he was listening. One of the engineers, watching closely, frowned. "Wait, is he checking for air leaks?" Another shook his head. "Impossible. He doesn't even have tools," but a small flicker of doubt sparked in their minds. The boy pressed his ear to the panel, listening for a faint hiss. His face lit up for a second, as if he had found something. He placed the rod against the side and twisted gently, prying at a loose edge. The metal gave way slightly. A small line of smoke escaped. The crowd gasped. The boy stepped back, eyes still fixed on the jet. "There," he said simply. The billionaire straightened, his smirk fading just a little. "There what?" The boy turned toward him, his voice steady. "That's where the problem starts." A heavy silence fell. Even the engineers stopped breathing for a moment. The billionaire's lips pressed into a thin line. He hated being challenged, hated being shown up, especially by a boy who owned nothing but the dirt under his feet. But something inside him, something refused to admit, was curious. Could it be? Could this boy actually know something his trained men didn't? The billionaire waved his hand. "Fine. Go on then. Show me what you can really do." The boy nodded once, then turned back to the jet, ready to begin. And as he did, the story took a turn that no one in that dusty little town would ever forget. The boy stood beside the giant jet, his small shadow falling across its polished silver body. The villagers held their breath, waiting to see what would happen. He dropped to his knees, his hands gently touching the edge of the panel he had loosened before. His thin fingers searched carefully, feeling for the source of the problem. Behind him, the crowd began to murmur. "This is crazy," one man said, shaking his head. "He's only a child," another added. A group of boys laughed, pointing at him. "He thinks he's an engineer now." But the boy didn't listen. He was already somewhere else in his own world, where machines spoke louder than people's doubts. The billionaire leaned against his car, his golden watch catching the fading sunlight. His arms were crossed, and a smirk played at the corner of his lips. "Go ahead," he called out. "Fix my jet, little boy. Show me the miracle I've been waiting for." His tone dripped with sarcasm, but inside a spark of curiosity still burned. He hated to admit it. But there was something about this boy's calmness that unsettled him. The guards stood nearby, their arms stiff at their sides, watching carefully. The engineers, however, could not stay silent. "This is foolish," one of them muttered. "He'll break something. He doesn't even have the right tools," another complained. The lead engineer pushed his glasses higher on his nose. "He won't even understand what he's looking at. Jets are not toys." Still, none of them dared to stop him. The billionaire had given his word. The boy could try. The boy pulled gently at the loosened panel until it opened wider. Inside, wires and tubes lay tangled like veins of a metal creature. Some wires sparked faintly, others hung loose. The smell of burnt fuel filled the air. He studied it carefully, his eyes moving with the patience of someone who had spent years fixing broken radios and tractors in his poor village. Machines were different sizes, different shapes, but in the end, they all lived by the same rules. Find what is broken, understand it, then heal it. The boy picked up a small piece of wire that dangled loosely. He turned it in his hands, testing it, listening to the faint hum it carried. He shook his head softly, as if the wire had confessed its weakness. The villagers grew restless. "Does he really think he can fix that?" One woman whispered. "He's wasting time," another replied. But some, though they would never admit it, felt a strange hope rising in their hearts. The boy leaned closer into the engine, his face lit by the glow of tiny sparks. His hands moved slowly, but with certainty, as if he knew exactly what he was searching for. The billionaire sighed loudly, shaking his head. "Unbelievable. I stopped my day for this circus. My time is worth millions, and I'm watching a barefoot boy play with wires." But his eyes stayed locked on the boy. For some reason, he could not look away. The guard shifted uneasily, watching the boy's small body half disappear into the jet's side. The engineers whispered angrily among themselves, "He's touching the fuel line. This is dangerous. Someone stop him before he makes it worse." But none dared to move. The boy reached deeper, pulling out a metal piece that had come loose. It was small, bent slightly at the edge, almost invisible to the untrained eye. He turned it over, nodded once, then looked around the ground. His eyes landed on a scrap of thin wire lying in the grass. He picked it up, tested its strength with a tug, and smiled faintly. The crowd leaned forward, whispering louder now. "What's he doing? Why is he picking garbage from the ground?" But the boy ignored them. He twisted the wire around the loose piece, tightening it, making it secure again. His small fingers worked quickly, like they had done this 100 times before. The engineers gasped. "No, this is not how repairs are done. This is wrong." But the boy didn't care about rules. He cared about results. He pressed the piece back into place, checked it once more, then stepped back, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "There," he whispered. The billionaire raised an eyebrow. "There? That's it? You call that fixing?" The boy didn't answer. He looked toward the cockpit and then pointed, "Try it now." The billionaire laughed bitterly. "Try it now? Do you think it's that simple?" But before he could refuse, the lead engineer stepped forward hesitantly. Something about the boy's certainty shook him. Against his better judgment, he climbed into the cockpit. The villagers fell completely silent. Even the birds in the trees seemed to stop singing. The field was filled with nothing but anticipation. The engineer's hands trembled as he turned the key and pressed the start button. For a moment, nothing. Then a low hum. A flicker of life. The engine coughed, sputtered, then roared loudly before dying again. The villagers gasped. Some clapped their hands over their mouths. Others shouted in disbelief. The boy, however, didn't flinch. His eyes were calm, his voice steady. Again he said softly. The engineer hesitated, then tried once more. The engine sputtered, roared louder this time, then went silent. The billionaire stepped forward, his jaw tight. His voice cut like a knife. Enough of this nonsense. You've wasted enough of my time. This child, but before he could finish, the boy raised his hand. Once more he said firmly. The billionaire's eyes narrowed. He hated being interrupted. And yet there was something in the boy's tone, firm, commanding, unshaken, that made even him pause. The engineer swallowed hard, then pressed the button again. This time, the engine roared alive with a deep, steady growl. The sound filled the air, strong and powerful. Smoke cleared. The jet vibrated under the force of its own rebirth. The villagers screamed in shock. Some jumped up and down. Others clapped their hands together. Children shouted with joy. The boy stood silently, watching the machine he had just brought back to life. His face showed no pride, no arrogance, only quiet satisfaction. The billionaire's eyes widened. For the first time that day, his voice failed him. Impossible. It was the word he hated most. But it was the only word in his mind. The sound of the engine still echoed across the small town. For a moment it felt as if the whole world had stopped. The mighty jet, which had refused to obey the billionaire's engineers, was alive again, breathing, rumbling, and vibrating under its own strength. The villagers stood frozen. Their mouths hung open, their eyes wide. Nobody had expected this. They had laughed. They had mocked. But now they were silent. Children tugged at their mother's hands, whispering, "He did it. He really did it." An old farmer wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Never seen anything like it," he muttered. That boy. He touched the machine like it was his own child. The engineers, however, stood in disbelief. Their faces turned pale. They exchanged nervous glances, their pride shattered in an instant. Some shook their heads violently, refusing to accept it. No one engineer whispered, "It's just luck. Nothing more." "Luck doesn't make a dead engine roar," another snapped back. Though his voice shook, at the center of it all, the billionaire's eyes burned with confusion. He had built empires, crushed competitors, and silenced critics with his wealth. Money had always solved everything. But in this moment, a barefoot broidered on his shirt, no tools in his hands had done what his millions could not. His lips pressed into a thin line. He refused to show weakness. He stepped forward, his sharp voice breaking the silence. "Turn it off." The lead engineer quickly obeyed, pressing the switch. The engine died, leaving the air heavy with smoke and tension. The roar faded into an unsettling silence. All eyes turned to the billionaire. His jaw was tight, his expression unreadable. He looked at the boy who stood calmly by the jet, his hands still dirty from the repair. The boy met his gaze without fear. The villagers held their breath. Finally, the billionaire spoke, his tone cutting. That was nothing. A trick. A coincidence. The real test is whether it flies. Gasps swept through the crowd. A flight? The boy had only touched a few wires, twisted some scraps together, and now the billionaire wanted to test it in the sky. The lead engineer stepped forward nervously. "Sir, it would be unwise. We don't know what he did. The engine may not hold." The billionaire's cold eyes snapped toward him. "Are you questioning me?" The engineer swallowed hard and stepped back. The boy's calm voice broke the tension. "It will fly." The words were simple, but they carried weight. The crowd murmured in disbelief. The boy spoke as though he had no doubt, no fear. The billionaire narrowed his eyes. "And what makes you so sure?" The boy wiped his hands on his shirt and looked up at the massive jet. Because machines tell the truth. They don't lie. And this one? It's ready. The villagers shivered at his words. Some whispered that the boy spoke like an old man, wise beyond his years. The billionaire let out a sharp laugh. Machines don't talk, boy. Money talks. And in my world, that's the only language that matters. The boy tilted his head, his eyes steady. Then maybe your world is broken. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Even the billionaire's guards shifted uneasily at the boy's boldness. No one spoke to the billionaire like that. The billionaire's face darkened, but inside, something twisted. He should have been furious. He should have ordered the guards to drag the boy away. Yet instead, he felt something strange. A flicker of respect, buried deep under his pride. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only the boy could hear. If you're wrong, if this jet fails in the air, it will be the last thing you ever fix. The boy didn't flinch. Then watch closely. You'll see. The billionaire turned away sharply, waving his hand. Prepare it for flight. The engineers scrambled, checking the panels, wiping sweat from their brows. They were terrified, not of the jet, but of what this boy's success meant. If a poor child could do in minutes what they could not in hours, what was left of their pride, their knowledge, their worth? The villagers pressed closer to the fence, whispering in awe. Mothers lifted their children so they could see better. Old men shook their heads, unable to believe what they had witnessed. But the boy stood apart, silent and calm, as if none of the noise touched him. As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting the sky in orange and red, the jet loomed like a sleeping beast about to wake again. The billionaire climbed the stairs slowly, each step echoing like a challenge. The crowd held its breath. Would he dare fly it himself? The boy's eyes followed him, unblinking. The billionaire paused at the top, his hand resting on the door. He turned once more, his gaze locking on the boy. This is your last chance, he said coldly. If this fails, you'll regret it. The boy's voice was quiet, but it carried through the air. It won't fail. The billionaire disappeared inside the jet. The villagers pressed closer, hearts pounding. The boy stood still, his shadow long against the grass. The silence before the storm had never felt so heavy. The air grew, heavy as the billionaire disappeared inside the jet. The villagers stood frozen, eyes locked on the giant machine. It was no longer just a broken aircraft. It was now the stage for something far greater. A poor boy's hands had dared to touch it. And now, a billionaire's pride would rise or fall with it. The engineers rushed around, their voices low and urgent. Sir, this is too risky, one whispered to another. What if the repair doesn't hold? But none of them dared speak directly to the billionaire again. His silence was sharper than a blade. The boy stood still on the grass, his hands behind his back. His eyes never left the jet. He looked calm to calm for someone whose entire life could change in the next few minutes. Mothers held their children close. Old men leaned on their walking sticks, and young boys climbed trees for a better view. The whole town had gathered, as if this small field had suddenly become the center of the world. From inside the cockpit, the billionaire's voice came through the speakers, deep and commanding. Clear the area. Guards stepped forward at once, waving their arms. The villagers shuffled back, forming a wide circle around the jet. Dust rose under their feet, catching the golden light of the setting sun. The lead engineer's hands shook as he gave the signal. Ready for engine test? A heartbeat of silence, then the roar. The jet's engines thundered back to life, louder, stronger, more alive than before. The ground vibrated beneath the villagers' feet. Dust swirled into the air. Children covered their ears, but their eyes remained wide with wonder. The boy didn't move. His expression didn't change. He had expected this. The billionaire's eyes scanned the controls. Everything was steady. No alarms, no warnings. It was impossible. And yet it was happening. He pushed the throttle gently. The jet rolled forward, its wheels crunching against the rough ground. Gasps spread through the crowd like wildfire. He's going to fly it. Someone shouted. He's mad. cried another, but no one looked away. The boy stepped closer to the fence, his eyes never blinking. The jet picked up speed, its massive wings cutting through the evening light. The villagers held their breath as it thundered down the makeshift runway. At the very last moment, the billionaire pulled the controls, and the jet lifted. The ground shook as the machine broke free of the earth, rising into the sky. The villagers screamed in awe, some falling to their knees, others throwing their hands into the air. "He's flying! He's flying!" The children shouted. The engineers stared, pale and speechless. They had been humiliated and done by a boy who had nothing but his hands and his belief. High above, the jet cut across the sky, its silver body glowing against the burning horizon. It turned gracefully, faster and smoother than anyone had dared to dream. Inside the cockpit, the billionaire gripped the controls tightly. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. For the first time in years, he felt his heart race not from money, not from power, but from pure, raw fear mixed with wonder. The boy's voice echoed in his mind. "It will fly." And it did. The villagers pointed to the sky, their voices rising like a choir. The jet was no longer just a machine, it was a miracle. And the boy was the one who had made it possible. Down on the ground, the boy remained still, his eyes fixed on the sky. A small smile touched his lips, but it was not pride, it was understanding. He knew machines. He knew their secrets. And he had trusted this one. The jet circled once more, then began its descent. Dust swirled as it touched the ground, wheels screeching before rolling to a steady stop. The villagers erupted into cheers. They clapped, shouted, and even cried. Children ran forward, dancing in the dirt. Women covered their faces with trembling hands, but the billionaire did not step out right away. Inside the cockpit, he sat frozen, staring at the quiet machine around him. His empire was built on money, on men who obeyed his orders, on power that crushed doubt. But this was different. A barefoot boy had given him back his wings. Slowly, he opened the door and stepped onto the stairs. His polished shoes touched the dirt again, and the cheers grew louder, but his eyes were not on the crowd. They were on the boy. The boy stood alone, still calm, still steady, as if he had been waiting. The billionaire walked toward him. Each step was slow, heavy, filled with thoughts he could not yet put into words. The crowd quieted, sensing the moment. Finally, the billionaire stopped in front of the boy. He looked down at him, searching his face for answers. For the first time in his life, the billionaire who never bowed, never begged, spoke words he had never spoken before. "How?" The boy looked up at him, his voice soft but clear. "Because machines need care, not money. You only gave it gold and orders. I gave it time." The billionaire's chest tightened. Those words pierced deeper than he wanted to admit. The villagers waited, holding their breath. But the billionaire said nothing. He simply turned away, his face unreadable. The boy, however, knew this was only the beginning. The villagers were still cheering, but their voices slowly began to fade as the billionaire's gaze locked on the boy. The powerful man stood in silence, his suit dusty, his polished shoes stained with the earth of the poor town. His jet had flown again, but his heart was not celebrating, for the first time in years. The billionaire felt something unfamiliar in certainty. He stepped closer to the boy. The guards followed a few steps behind, their hands near their weapons, their eyes sharp. The engineers lingered at the edge of the crowd, ashamed and restless, their pride hanging in the dirt. The boy did not move. He stood with the same quiet confidence, his small frame straight, his eyes steady. He looked almost fragile against the towering billionaire, but there was something in his gaze that made even the powerful man hesitate. The villagers whispered among themselves. What will happen now? Will he reward the boy, or will he punish him? The billionaire stopped just a few feet away. The air grew heavy. The cheers had died completely, leaving only the soft rustle of the wind through the trees. Then, in a voice low and controlled, the billionaire asked a single word, "Who?" The boy tilted his head slightly. "Who?" The billionaire's eyes narrowed. Who are you? The question cut through the silence like a blade. It was the question on every tongue, the question no one dared to ask. Who was this barefoot boy who could breathe life into a dead jet, who could speak with the calmness of a man twice his age? The boy said nothing at first. His eyes wandered briefly to the sky, where the fading light of day painted the clouds gold. Then he looked back at the billionaire and spoke softly. I am no one. Gasps ran through the villagers. No one? How could someone who had just humbled the richest man in the country call himself no one? The billionaire's jaw tightened. He leaned closer, his sharp eyes searching the boy's face. Don't play games with me. Nobody can do what you just did, not even my best men. You are not ordinary. Tell me the truth. The boy met his stare without fear. I told you the truth. I am just a poor boy who listens to machines when others shout at them. The billionaire's nostrils flared. His pride could not accept such a simple answer. Machines don't speak. People fix them. People like my engineers, trained with money, knowledge, power, and yet you, with nothing, with bare hands you. His voice cracked with anger. You made me look like a fool. The boy did not respond. He let the words fall to the ground like stones. The villagers shifted nervously. Some thought the billionaire would strike the boy. Others thought the guards might drag him away. But instead, the billionaire's voice dropped, quieter now, almost as if speaking to himself. You can't be ordinary. Tell me who taught you. Where did you learn this? The boy hesitated. For the first time, his calmness seemed to waver. He looked down at his hands, scarred and rough from years of work. Memories flickered in his mind, nights spent fixing broken radios by candlelight. Days repairing bicycles with scraps from the junkyard. Evenings listening to the hum of old engines in silence, as if they carried secrets only he could hear. Finally, he spoke. No one taught me. The machines did. I listened. I failed. I tried again. Every broken thing was my teacher. Every mistake was my lesson. That is all. The villagers murmured in awe. The billionaire stared at him, speechless. His entire life had been built on the belief that money could buy the best teachers, the best training, the best of everything. But this boy had learned with nothing and yet achieved what no millionaire could. The billionaire's lips curled into a bitter smile. So you're saying you're self-taught? The boy shrugged lightly. I am saying money is not the only way to learn. The words struck the billionaire harder than he expected. For a man who measured the world in wealth, this was not just an answer, it was an attack. The crowd grew restless, waiting for the billionaire's response. Finally, he laughed. But it was not a laugh of joy, it was sharp, heavy, filled with disbelief. A poor boy teaching me about money. The world truly has gone mad. He turned slightly, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. Listen well, people. Do not be fooled by luck. One spark does not make him a genius. The skies are dangerous. If this boy is truly what he claims, then he should prove it again. Not once again. Gasps rippled through the villagers. Again? Hadn't the boy already proven himself? The boy's calm voice answered before anyone else could. If you wish. The billionaire froze for a moment. He had expected fear, hesitation, excuses, but instead, the boy accepted the challenge without blinking. His heart tightened. This was no ordinary child. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only the boy could hear. You may have won the crowd today, but I will not bow to you. I will find your secret. And when I do, you will regret making me feel small. The boy looked up at him, his expression unreadable. I do not want you small. I want you to listen. The billionaire blinked. For a moment, his chest burned not with anger. It was something he hadn't felt in years. Shame. He turned away sharply, waving his hand. Guards, prepare my things. We leave at dawn. The villagers murmured in confusion. Some thought the boy would be taken away. Others feared the billionaire would punish him later, but the boy only stood there, silent, his eyes following the man as he walked back toward the jet. The engineers hurried behind him, whispering like frightened children. The guards moved swiftly, clearing the way. But the boy knew. This was not the end. The real test had only just begun. The night had fallen over the small town, and yet the villagers could not sleep. They gathered in little groups, whispering about the miracle they had seen. Children replayed the moment in their minds, their tiny hands pretending to hold the controls of the jet. Old men shook their heads, repeating the same words over and over. A barefoot boy did what million-dollar men could not, but inside his jet. The billionaire did not sleep either. He sat in the leather seat of his private cabin, a glass of water untouched before him. His sharp eyes stared out the window at the dark sky, but his thoughts were far away. The boy's calm face haunted him. His words repeated in his head. Machines need care, not money. You only gave it gold and orders? I gave it time. The billionaire clenched his fists. No one had spoken to him like that before. Not his partners, not his rivals, not even his closest family. And yet, a poor child had made him feel small and acceptable. He leaned forward, pressing a button on the table. Within seconds, the lead engineer entered, his shoulders slouched, his face pale. You called, sir? The billionaire's voice was low, dangerous. Tomorrow, at dawn, we fly to the city. This boy will come with us. The engineer blinked. The boy, you. You want to take him? Yes. The billionaire's jaw tightened. Let him prove himself in front of men who understand value. My board will see. My world will see. If he is real, then he will not hide under the applause of peasants. The engineer hesitated. But, sir, he is only a child. The billionaire's sharp gaze cut him off. Do not speak again. Prepare everything. The engineer bowed his head quickly and left. The billionaire leaned back, his chest rising and falling. Tomorrow, he told himself, the truth would be revealed. Either the boy would crumble under pressure, or he would re-end if he rose. Then the billionaire would have to know why. At dawn, the sound of engines woke the villagers. The guards moved quickly, their polished boots kicking up dust as they loaded supplies into vehicles. The giant jet stood ready again, silver body glowing in the pale morning light. The boy stood at the edge of the field, watching quietly. His eyes were calm, but his heart beat faster than before. He knew the billionaire would not stop. This was not about a machine anymore. It was about pride, power, a challenge that went beyond wires and metal. The villagers gathered around him. Are they taking you? A woman asked nervously. The boy nodded. Don't go, another whispered. That man. He is dangerous. But the boy shook his head. I must. Children clung to his arms, their voices pleading. Stay! Don't leave us! The boy knelt, smiling gently. I will return, and when I do, I will show you that even the smallest voice can be heard in the loudest rooms. Tears welled in the villagers' eyes as they watched him walk toward the jet. Surrounded by guards, the billionaire stood at the stairs, his hands behind his back, his face hard as stone. When the boy reached him, the man spoke coldly. Enjoyed your little victory yesterday? The boy looked up at him calmly. It was not victory. It was truth. The billionaire's jaw tightened. Without another word, he turned and entered the jet. The boy followed. Hours later, the skyline of the city stretched before them, tall towers of glass and steel, glittering under the rising sun. The jet landed smoothly on a private runway, guarded by men in suits and dark glasses. Expensive cars waited, engines humming. The boy stepped out, his bare feet touching the hot pavement. The city felt strange, cold, sharp, unwelcoming. People stared at him, some with curiosity, most with disgust. Who is that? One man whispered. A poor street boy? Another sneered. Why is he with the billionaire? The billionaire ignored their voices. He led the boy into a black car, and soon they were driving through the heart of the city. The boy looked out the window at the endless rows of lights, the rushing traffic, the towering buildings that seemed to scrape the sky. This is your world? The boy asked softly. The billionaire glanced at him. Yes, this is the real world, not your little village. Here, only the strong survive. The boy turned his gaze back to the window. Then perhaps your world has forgotten what strength really is. The billionaire's lips pressed into a thin line, but he said nothing. They arrived at a massive building, its glass walls shining like a mirror. Inside, men in suits and women in sharp dresses moved quickly, their eyes on phones, their voices clipped and urgent. The air smelled of perfume, leather, and power. At the top floor, a grand boardroom, a weighted long table, polished wood, backed chairs, and a wall of windows overlooking the city. The billionaire entered first, his presence commanding silence. His board members, wealthy men and women who controlled millions with the signatures, to greet him. But when their eyes fell on the boy, confusion spread across their faces. "Who is this child?" one man asked with disdain. "A charity case," a woman added, smirking. The billionaire raised his hand, silencing them. "This boy claims to have fixed what none of you could." Gasps filled the room. The board members exchanged shocked glances. "You mean the jet? Impossible. A trick, surely." The billionaire's voice cut through the noise. "You will see for yourselves." He turned to the boy, his eyes sharp. "Here in this room, among people who hold real power, you will prove yourself again, or you will be nothing." The boy stepped forward slowly, his bare feet echoing against the polished floor. He looked at the board members, at their cold eyes and mocking smiles. He felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on him, but he did not bow. He did not flinch. Instead, he lifted his chin and spoke, "I do not need to prove myself to money. But if truth is what you seek, then truth is what you will see." The room went silent. Even the billionaire felt a chill. The test was about to begin. The boardroom was silent. The glass walls reflected the city's skyline, the tall towers outside glowing in the afternoon light. Every member of the billionaire's board sat stiff in their chairs, their expensive suits and glittering jewelry shining under the ceiling lights. Their eyes, however, were sharp and cruel, fixed on the poor barefoot boy who dared to stand among them. The boy stood still, calm as stone. His hands rested at his sides, his face unreadable. But inside, he could feel their judgment pressing down like a storm. The billionaire leaned forward in his chair, his voice cutting through the silence. "You said you can fix what others cannot." "Very well," he snapped his fingers. Immediately, 2 guards rolled in a large steel box on wheels. It was heavy, covered in wires, its surface marked with the logo of the billionaire's company. Sparks flickered from the side, the faint smell of smoke escaping from within. "This," the billionaire said coldly, "is a prototype engine worth $50 million. My engineers have spent months trying to repair it. They failed. Every hour it remains broken, costs my company thousands." Gasps rippled through the board members. Their eyes widened at the mention of the number. The billionaire's gaze locked on the boy. "Fix it. Right here. Right now. Before my board, or admit you are nothing but a lucky village." "Child." A low murmur spread across the room. "This is madness. A child can't fix that. He will embarrass." Himself, the boy walked slowly toward the steel box. His bare feet made no sound against the polished floor. He crouched beside the engine, studying the wires, the gears, the burnt edges. He placed his small hand gently against the side, as if listening to the machine's heartbeat. The board members laughed. One man leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. "Look at him. Touching it like it's an animal. He knows nothing." Another woman smirked. This will be amusing, but the boy ignored them. His eyes narrowed as he traced a broken circuit with his finger. His lips moved slightly, whispering words only he could hear. The billionaire watched closely, his jaw tight. He wanted the boy to fail. He wanted him crushed beneath the weight of impossible expectations. And yet, part of him feared what might happen if the boy succeeded again. The boy looked up. "Bring me to wires, copper. A small blade. And water." The board burst into laughter. "Water? For an engine? Ridiculous. This child doesn't even know what he's asking for." The billionaire's voice silenced them. "Give him what he asks." The guards rushed to fetch the items. Within minutes, they returned with copper wires, a small blade, and a bottle of water. The boy took them carefully. He cut away the burnt wire with the blade, stripped the copper, and began to connect pieces with a calm, steady hand. He worked slowly, not with the rush of panic, but with the patience of someone who understood. He poured a few drops of water onto the surface, letting the steam rise. He pressed his ear against the machine, listening to the faint crackle within. The room grew tense. The board members leaned forward, their laughter fading into unease. "What is he doing?" one whispered. "Is it possible?" Another muttered. Minutes passed. The boy tightened the last connection, then stepped back. His hands were blackened with grease, his face calm as ever. He looked at the billionaire. "Try it now." The billionaire hesitated. His heart pounded. Slowly, he nodded at the engineer. The engineer swallowed hard and pressed a button on the panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Silence filled the room, and then WHRR, the engine roared to life, the sparks vanishing, the gears spinning smooth and steady. The machine, once silent and dead, now hummed like a living creature reborn. The board members gasped, rising to their feet. "It works." "Impossible." "How did he—" The boy stood quietly, his eyes lowered. He was not proud, not boastful. To him it was simple. The machine had only needed to be heard. The billionaire's hands tightened into fists. His face betrayed nothing, but inside, a storm raged. He had wanted the boy to fail. Instead, the boy had humiliated him again. The board turned to the billionaire, their voices sharp and eager. "This boy, where did you find him?" "He must be trained. He is worth more than all your engineers." The billionaire slammed his hand on the table, silencing them. His cold eyes burned into the boy. "Do not be fooled," he growled. "This boy is not magic. He is not special. He has only been lucky twice. Luck does not last forever." But even as he spoke, his words sounded hollow. Deep inside, he knew the truth. This was no luck. This was something he could not buy, something he could not control. The boy lifted his gaze. His voice was calm, steady, and filled with quiet strength. "Machines are like people. They break when no one listens. You throw money at them, but you never hear them. I listen. That is all." The board members shifted uncomfortably. His words struck deeper than they wished to admit. The billionaire rose from his seat, towering over the boy. His pride, his empire, his very identity felt threatened. "This is not over," he said coldly. "If you are truly what you claim to be, then you will face one final test. Not of machines, but of men." The boy met his gaze without fear. "Then I will face it." And the room fell silent. The weight of the billionaire's challenge hanging heavy in the air. The boardroom was still trembling from what had just happened. The machine's hum echoed faintly in the corners, proof that the impossible had been done. The boy stood quietly, his hands blackened with grease, his eyes calm and steady. Around him, the powerful men and women whispered in disbelief. But the billionaire's face was like stone. His pride burned like fire, and his voice broke the silence. "Enough." Everyone turned to him. "This boy has shown tricks with wires and steel," the billionaire said coldly. "But life is not made of machines. A man is tested not by fixing engines, but by facing people, power, and choices." He leaned forward, his sharp eyes locking on the boy. "If you claim to be more than luck, then prove it. Before my people, in my world, where no wire or copper can save you." The board members shifted in their seats. They had seen the boy do the impossible twice, but this sounded different. The boy, however, did not flinch. His voice was soft, but steady. "Very well. Tell me your test." The billionaire smirked. "Tonight, I will host a gathering. Every powerful man and woman of this city will be their leaders, politicians, investors. You will stand in that hall. If you can move even one of them, not with machines, but with your words, then perhaps you have something money cannot buy." Gasps spread across the board. "A child? Speak to the city's elite?" They will eat him alive. He will be crushed. The billionaire ignored them. His gaze never left the boy. Deep inside, he hoped the child would fail. In front of hundreds of powerful people, the truth would come out. He would expose the boy as nothing more than a poor villager lucky enough to stumble twice into success. The boy simply nodded. Then I will speak. That night, the city glowed brighter than the stars. The billionaire's mansion rose like a palace, its marble walls shining, its chandeliers spilling golden light onto the streets. Expensive cars lined the driveway, their polished bodies reflecting the grandeur of the evening inside. The grand hall was alive with laughter, music, and the clink of glasses. Men in black suits and women in glittering gowns filled the room, their voices loud, their pride louder. At the center, the billionaire stood, his smile wide as he welcomed his guests. Yet behind that smile, his eyes were sharp, waiting, watching. And then the boy entered. The hall fell quiet for a moment. Whispers spread like fire. Who is he? A beggar child? Why is he here? The boy walked slowly, barefoot on the marble floor, his simple clothes a sharp contrast to the silk and diamonds around him. But though eyes mocked him, he did not lower his head. The billionaire clapped his hands. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice booming, "tonight you will witness something unusual. This boy claims he holds a gift greater than money. He says he can reach hearts, not just machines. Let us see if that is true." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "A child, speak to us?" "This will be amusing." He will stutter and fall silent. The billionaire turned to the boy. "There is your stage. Speak. If you fail, you will leave this house tonight with nothing." The boy stepped forward. He looked at the crowd, faces proud, eyes cold, hearts locked behind walls of gold. For a moment he was silent. The guests shifted impatiently. "Well, speak!" someone shouted. "He has nothing to say," another mocked. Then the boy's voice rose. "Do you know what I saw today?" he asked softly. The room stilled. His words were simple, but they carried weight. "I saw men who measure worth by the shine of their shoes, the cut of their suits, the height of their towers. But when your machines fail, when your money cannot save you, you become helpless. Do you know who fixed it? A barefoot boy from nowhere. And do you know why?" He paused, his eyes sweeping the room. "The silence grew heavier because I listened. Not to your pride. Not to your numbers. I listened to what was broken. Machines break when no one cares. People do too." Gasps echoed. A woman lowered her glass slowly, her hand trembling. The boy's voice grew firmer. "You spend your lives chasing gold, yet you have forgotten the sound of truth. Money can build walls, but it cannot fix hearts. I fixed your billionaire's jet because I cared enough to hear it cry. Tell me, when was the last time you listened? To your own children? To the poor at your gates? To your own hearts?" The hall was silent. The boy's words hung in the air like a mirror, forcing them to see themselves. One man looked down at his hands, shame creeping into his eyes. A woman dabbed at her cheek, a tear breaking past her pride. The billionaire's face darkened. He had wanted the boy to fail, to be crushed. But instead, the boy's words pierced the room like arrows. The very people he wanted to impress were now moved not by him, but by a barefoot child. A voice broke the silence. "He is right." Everyone turned. It was one of the oldest board members, a man known for his wealth and cruelty. His voice trembled as he spoke. "I've not spoken to my son in 3 years. Tonight this boy's words remind me what I lost." Another voice followed. "I measure life by numbers. But my own daughter told me last week she feels unseen, and I ignored her. Perhaps I was wrong." Soon, voices rose from every corner of the hall. Confessions, regrets. Truths money had buried but not erased. The billionaire clenched his fists. His guests, his empire, were being shaken by a barefoot boy. The boy looked at him then. His eyes were calm, his words gentle. "You wanted me to face men, not machines. I have. and I showed them what money cannot teach: to listen. The hall erupted in applause. Not polite claps of business meetings, but raw, genuine claps that came from moved hearts. Some rose to their feet, tears streaming down their faces. The billionaire stood frozen, his chest heavy. The boy had not only passed the test, he had turned the very people of power against the walls money had built. For the first time in his life, the billionaire felt something he could not name. Not anger, not victory. Something far more dangerous: doubt. The applause in the hall was thunderous, echoing off the marble walls like waves crashing against a cliff. The boy stood still, not smiling, not proud, only calm, his small hands resting at his sides. Around him, powerful men and women wiped tears, their faces softening in ways they had not allowed in years. But the billionaire, he was not clapping. His face was dark, his eyes like steel. Inside, his pride twisted like a blade. This was supposed to be his night, his stage, his world. And yet all eyes were on the poor boy who had stolen his thunder with nothing more than simple words: unacceptable. He forced a smile and raised his hands. The applause died quickly. His presence was still strong enough to silence the hall. "Very moving," he said smoothly. "Very touching. But words are wind, and wind, my friends, cannot build towers, cannot feed nations, cannot protect empires. Only power can do that. And power, as you all know, belongs to those who earn it." He stepped forward, towering over the boy. His smile was sharp, like a blade hidden behind velvet. "So let us see if this child's power extends beyond tricks and speeches. Let us see if his heart is as strong as his tongue." The guests exchanged uneasy looks. The air grew heavy again. The billionaire snapped his fingers. The doors at the far end of the hall opened, and 2 guards dragged in a man, dirty, trembling, his clothes torn. His wrists were bound, his face swollen with bruises. Gasps filled the room. "Who is that? Why is he here?" The billionaire's voice was cold. "This man is a thief. He was caught stealing from my warehouses. He betrayed my company, my workers, my trust." The thief looked up, his eyes full of fear. "Please, I was hungry. My children." Silence. The billionaire barked. The man shrank back, his voice dying. The billionaire turned to the boy, his eyes glinting with cruel amusement. "You spoke of care, of listening. Then listen to this man. If you truly believe what you say, set him free. Speak for him. But remember, every guest here knows the law. A thief must pay. If you defend him, you stand against justice, against me, against power itself." The room went still. The trap was set. If the boy stayed silent, he would look weak, his words empty. If he spoke, he would challenge the billionaire's authority in front of everyone, a dangerous move that could turn the crowd against him. The guests whispered nervously. "He cannot defend a thief. If he does, he will look foolish. This will break him." All eyes turned to the boy. The boy walked slowly to the trembling thief. He knelt beside him, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. The man flinched at first, then looked into the boy's calm eyes. For a moment, the fear in his face eased. The boy stood, facing the hall. His voice rose, soft but strong. "You call him a thief, but I call him a man with a story. He did not steal gold for greed. He stole food for hunger. And hunger, my friends, is a crime of the world, not of the heart." Murmurs spread across the room. The billionaire's jaw tightened. Excuses. If we forgive thieves, what will stop others from stealing? The boy turned to him, his gaze steady. Punishment will not stop hunger. Only kindness will. You build walls to guard your wealth, but you leave people starving outside. And then you call them criminals when they climb the walls you built. The hall grew tense. Some guests lowered their eyes, unable to meet the boy's gaze. His words cut deeper than they wanted to admit. The billionaire stepped closer, his face inches from the boy's. His voice was a low growl. "Careful, child. You stand in my house, in my world. Defy me here, and you will not walk out alive." The boy did not move. His calm voice carried through the silence. "You asked for truth? I gave it. You asked for strength. I showed it. You asked for words. I spoke them. Now you ask for justice. I say justice without mercy is only cruelty in disguise." The thief broke down, sobbing. The guests shifted uneasily, torn between the billionaire's command and the boy's courage. Then, slowly, one voice rose. "He is right." It was a woman near the front, her eyes wet with tears. "I once fired a worker for stealing bread from my kitchen. Later I learned he had not eaten in days. I regret it still." Another voice followed. "I locked a servant out for breaking a vase. He begged me to listen. I did not. And I still hear his cries in my sleep." One by one the guests began to speak, their confessions filling the hall, their hearts cracking open. The billionaire's grip on the room was slipping. His trap had turned against him. Instead of crushing the boy, it had awakened the very people he wished to control. The boy looked at him then, his eyes calm, his words gentle. "You wanted to prove me wrong. Instead, you proved yourself. You showed them power without mercy." And they saw the emptiness of it. The billionaire's face hardened. Rage burned in his chest. He wanted to strike, to silence, to end the boy right there. But the applause came again, louder, stronger. The hall erupted with voices praising the boy, their claps shaking the marble floor. The billionaire stood frozen, trapped in his own game. For the third time, the barefoot boy had defeated him not with strength, not with money, but with truth. And deep inside, though he would never admit it, the billionaire felt something he had not known in years: fear. The jet was silent now, except for the soft hum of the engine. Everyone inside stared at the boy. He had done what no one believed possible. The billionaire's assistant whispered, "Sir, the plane is running. It's safe." But the billionaire didn't reply. He was just looking at the boy, really looking at him. For the first time, his eyes were not proud, not cold, not full of command. They were filled with something different, something softer. The boy, covered in grease, wiped his hands on his torn shirt. He looked at the billionaire, nervous but steady. "I told you," he said quietly. "I can fix it." Those words hit the billionaire like a stone in his heart. He remembered his own childhood, the days when he had nothing, the days when people told him he couldn't. He had fought his way to the top. But somewhere along the road he had lost that fire. He had bought everything with money. But this boy had shown him something that money could not buy: belief. The assistant stepped closer. "Shall we take off now, sir?" The billionaire raised his hand slowly. "Not yet." His voice was softer than usual. "I want to talk to him first." Everyone looked surprised. The mighty billionaire who never wasted a second was stopping everything just to speak with a poor boy. The boy shifted nervously, not sure what would happen. Was the man angry? Would he punish him? The billionaire stood up from his leather seat, walked over and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. His touch was firm but gentle. "You fixed my plane," he said, almost in disbelief. "But you also fixed something in me." The boy looked confused. "What do you mean, sir?" The billionaire smiled faintly. "You reminded me what it means to fight, to believe in yourself, to do the impossible." His voice grew heavy with emotion. "And that's something money can never buy." The boy's eyes widened. He had never heard a rich man speak like that before. He didn't know what to say. The cabin was so silent that even the crew stopped breathing. They knew something big was happening, something more than just a plane being fixed. The billionaire turned to his staff. "Cancel my next meeting?" the assistant gasped. "But sir, it's with the board." "They're waiting in New York," I said. "Cancel it," the billionaire interrupted, his voice firm again. "Some things are more important." And with that, he sat down beside the boy, ready to listen. For the first time in years, the billionaire wasn't in a rush. He wanted to hear the boy's story. The billionaire leaned back in his seat. His sharp eyes softened as he studied the boy, waiting. For the first time, He wasn't the one speaking. He was listening. The boy looked down at his dirty hands. He hesitated. Nobody had ever cared to hear his story before. People usually told him to stay quiet, to stay out of the way. But something in the billionaire's voice made him open his heart. My mama used to say. "Nothing in this world comes easy," the boy began softly. His voice was low, but steady. She worked in houses, cleaning, cooking, anything to feed us. My father. He left when I was little. The billionaire's chest tightened, but he stayed silent. The boy went on. We didn't have much. Sometimes, not even food. But Mama always told me, son, if you can't buy it, learn to fix it. If you can't fix it, make it. If you can't make it, then don't give up. His eyes glistened, but he didn't cry. He was too used to holding his pain inside. So I watched people, the boy continued. Mechanics, carpenters, farmers. Anyone who worked with their hands. I never went to school much, but I learned by watching, by trying. People laughed at me. They said, "What can a poor boy fix?" The billionaire swallowed hard. The words cut deep, because only hours ago he had thought the same thing. The boy touched the metal wall of the jet almost like it was alive. Machines. They talk. Not with words, but with sounds. You just have to listen. That's what I did when your jet stopped. I listened. Everyone in the cabin sat frozen, caught in his words. The billionaire leaned forward, his voice low. And your mother? Where is she now? The boy's lips trembled. He paused before whispering, "She got sick. We had no money for doctors. She told me, don't cry, be strong. Fix your own life." His voice broke for a second, then steadied. She's gone now. The billionaire's throat tightened. He looked at the boy not as a stranger, not as a poor child, but as someone who carried pain, strength and courage beyond his years. The boy quickly wiped his eyes and forced a small smile. That's why I say, sir, nothing is too broken to fix. Not even your jet. The billionaire didn't reply right away. His hands, usually steady, clenched into fists. His heart was beating faster. For the first time in many years, the billionaire felt something he couldn't control. Respect and guilt. He whispered to himself, "Money couldn't save my plane, and it couldn't save your mother." The boy nodded slowly. "Because money isn't everything, sir. Sometimes it's just..." Heart's silence filled the jet again. But this silence was different. It wasn't heavy. It was powerful. The billionaire finally understood. This boy hadn't just fixed a machine. He had repaired something deeper inside the man. The billionaire sat in silence, his mind racing. All his life, he had been the one giving orders, making choices, buying solutions. But now, for the first time, he felt small in front of a boy who owned nothing yet carried everything that mattered. He looked at the boy again. The child's shirt was torn, his hands rough, his eyes tired. But inside those eyes, there was fire. A fire the billionaire had lost long ago. Finally, he spoke. His voice was calm, but everyone in the cabin leaned forward. Sensing something big, "You said nothing is too broken to fix," the billionaire said slowly. "Do you believe that about people, too?" The boy hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir. Even people can be fixed. Sometimes, they just need someone to believe in them." The words struck the billionaire like thunder. His chest ached, but not from anger, from truth. He stood up, walked to the front of the cabin, and turned to face his staff. His assistant looked nervous. The pilot and crew waited for instructions. The billionaire's eyes were firm, but different, warmer, deeper. "Listen carefully," he said. "Cancel every meeting. Cancel every call. Today is no longer about business." The assistant gasped. "But sir, the board is waiting." "The deal, let them wait," the billionaire interrupted. His voice was final, like steel. "This boy, he is my priority now." Everyone in the jet froze. Nobody had ever heard him speak like that before. The billionaire turned back to the boy. He placed a hand on his shoulder again, steady and strong. You fixed my jet. But more than that, you reminded me who I used to be. I can't let that go." The boy looked up, confused. "What do you mean, sir?" The billionaire took a deep breath. His eyes shone with something rare emotion. "I mean, from this moment, your life is going to change." The cabin grew tense. Everyone waited. Would he give the boy money? A reward? A scholarship? No one knew. But they could all feel that whatever the billionaire was about to say would not just surprise them. It would shock the world. The boy's heart raced. He had no idea what was coming, and the billionaire, for the first time in years, smiled. A real smile. The boy stood frozen, his heart pounding. The billionaire's words echoed in his ears from this moment. "Your life is going to change." Everyone inside the jet leaned forward, waiting for the decision. Even the engine seemed quieter, as if the whole plane was holding its breath. The billionaire took a step closer to the boy. His voice was steady, but it carried weight. "You don't belong in the streets. You don't belong in hunger and pain. You belong where your talent can shine." The boy swallowed hard, unsure what to say. The billionaire continued, "From today, you are under my care. I will send you to the best schools. You will have teachers, books, tools, everything you need to build the future you deserve." The assistant gasped. The crew exchanged shocked glances. Nobody could believe what they were hearing. The boy's lips trembled. "School? Me?" The billionaire nodded firmly. "Yes, and not just school. I want you to train with my engineers, my scientists, my builders. If you can fix my jet with your bare hands, I can only imagine what you'll do with knowledge." Tears filled the boy's eyes. For years, he had been invisible, ignored, laughed at. Now, one of the richest men in the world was looking at him like he mattered, like he was someone but sir. The boy whispered, "Why me?" The billionaire's eyes softened. "Because you fixed more than my jet today. You fixed my heart. You showed me that hope can live anywhere, even in the poorest hands. And the world needs boys like you." The boy couldn't hold back his tears anymore. He cried not from sadness, but from the shock of finally being seen. The billionaire placed both hands on the boy's shoulders. "You once said nothing is too broken to fix." He smiled faintly. "Well, I believe you, and I want you to fix the world starting with yourself." Everyone in the cabin clapped softly, some with tears in their eyes. It wasn't just a plane that had landed in this small town. It was destiny. The boy, wiping his tears, whispered back the same words he had spoken before. "I can fix it." This time it wasn't about machines. It was about his life, and the billionaire knew this boy's journey had only just begun.